This is Reverend Dean Nelson of the Frederick Douglass Foundation and the Douglass Leadership Institute. We want to say happy Black History Month to everybody, and also a happy Frederick Douglass Week. Here at the Frederick Douglass Foundation and the Douglass Leadership Institute, we emphasize righteousness, justice, liberty, and virtue. And we have been focusing all week on a number of issues, from supporting criminal justice reform, supporting strengthening the Black family. And today we're emphasizing economic opportunity. And the title of our program this afternoon is Blacks in Business, Exploring Pathways to Economic Opportunity for African Americans. And I'm grateful to have some fantastic panelists with me today. A good friend, Bruce Lavelle, who has served with Small Business Administration's advocacy and is a small business owner. We also have with us David Byrd, who also has served in government as well as in consulting and small businesses with Bird's Eye, and also a great friend, Nicole Cober, who we refer to affectionately as Nick Cober, and she has actually written a book and also serves as principal managing partner of Cober Johnson and Romney and CJR Development. So thank you all for being with us. The way that we're going to start our program is having each of our panelists to take a few minutes to have opening statements where they will talk a little bit about themselves and the work that they have done either in government or in the private sector. And then we'll go into some questions, because we really do want to explore how we can increase some of these opportunities for success in the business arena, particularly for African Americans. And so, David, thank you so much for being with us. You're up first.
Dean, thank you so much for inviting me, and I appreciate being on this panel with some of my friends and the other guests. David Byrd is my name. I've got over 30 years of experience in state, county, local, federal government. I'm a 3-time presidential appointee, 3-time gubernatorial appointee, have worked for county government, and I own my own business, Bird's Eye LLC, for over 5 years. In fact, if you want to go visit it, go www.birdseye.com. I offered strategic consulting. I've worked with unions, political candidates, and I'm actually a certified life skills coach. I've worked with homeless families and individuals in homeless shelters around DC, as well as been in juvenile detention centers and worked with Black and brown young men, teaching them financial literacy and life skills. You know, this is a great time, Black History Month, Dean, to talk about Black business, because Frederick Douglass, being part of one of the first Black banks in this country, all the way to today, where we've had Black billionaires of Oprah Winfrey, Michael Jordan, Reginald Lewis, the first Black billionaire in the history of the United States. Also, he got into Harvard Law School without taking the LSAT, by the way. And
That
in
I
the
did
last,
not know.
yes, and in the last year, if you go read his book, it's a very interesting story how he was able to do that. And in the last year, we lost one of the most celebrated Black business people, and that was Earl Graves, who produced Black Enterprise Magazine. And I'm proud to say, Dean, that Black Enterprise Magazine, Essence Magazine, all came from grants out of my agency, where I was the former director, the Minority Business Development Agency, which this year turns 52 years old. Wow. Started by the esteemed Bob Brown of Greensboro, North Carolina, which he helped write the executive order for President Nixon in 1969. So I'm going to stop there, because when we get into the discussion, I'll talk about how many Black businesses are out there, the CARES Act, where are we going as Black businesses, the things we should get into. Looking at the business of space, and not the space in your house, Dean, but the space, outer space. You know, there's big business in that as well. We just landed on Mars. Perseverance landed on Mars yesterday. So right. We'll get into talking about all of that and Black business.
Wow, that is a wealth of information, man. That pays for the charge of already just showing up for this panel. So thank you so much, David. Nicole, why don't you jump on? Nick Cober, we are grateful to have you on. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your involvement in this space as well.
Well, thank you. Good evening, gentlemen. I am representing the ladies here this evening.
Doing it
Very
well too.
happy to do so. Very happy to do so. My name is Nicole Cober. I have several monikers, but I am the principal managing partner of Cober Johnson and Romney. We are a band of amazing professionals that try to economic development. We have developers, attorneys, communications professionals, and everyone in between coming together around the table to help do revitalization in our communities. I am also a member of the National Women's Business Council. We are a bipartisan council appointed by the White House, and we advise the White House, Congress, and the SBA on women in business issues. I am all things advocacy for women in business and small business. I have run the I've been a SCORE mentor. I've worked with the SBA on the Emerging Leaders Program, really scaling our small businesses. And one thing that I am absolutely proud of is being an entrepreneur, a woman of color entrepreneur myself. We have started a community called Start Her Scale Her at starterscaler.com, where we bring together resources and relationships for Black women entrepreneurs. Being on the council, I'm very aware of the disparity access to capital that all women businesses face, but particularly Black women businesses. So we really want to coalesce around them and give them the resources, talk to them about credit, talk to them about having excellent relationships with their bankers so that when they are in the position to scale and add team members, employees, that they're in the position to do so with the support of their lending institutions. So that's a little bit about me. And again, I'm very thankful and grateful to be here with you this evening.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Nicole. And I look forward to hearing a little bit more about your time there with the National Women Business Council. Bruce Lavelle, all the way from Atlanta. Talk to me, brother. Thanks so much for joining this program.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Dean. You're always, you're a trooper, and I thank you for having me in the panels. Bruce Lavelle here in Atlanta, Georgia, small business owner, 27 years now. Again, I'm getting older. Married to a fabulous wife, Sharon, two awesome kids, young adults, as I might say, one in law school, one in Terry Business School. Very privileged and honored to have a business, even thriving still in the COVID situation. So I'm very thankful for that. But a little background about myself. I own Dunwoody Diamonds USA. That's DunwoodyDiamondsUSA.com. You want to check it out. Jewelry Your Way Made the USA. I believe we're still one of the largest Black owned diamond store jewelry manufacturers in the country. I'm hoping there's going to be more. So I'm not trying to just keep it just for ourselves, but it's been a privilege. Also, we have Lavelle Properties. We've developed shopping centers, and my wife and I, as I say, she's my business partner, not just Bruce's wife, but she's an actual 50-50 partner on everything we've done in the last 29 years of our marriage, which we just celebrated February 14th, Valentine's Day. So it's been a great run, a great ride. I'm thankful for her. And of course, thankful to God to have such a wonderful family and a wonderful business. Privileged to be the chairman of the 7th largest transit system here in Georgia, Atlanta, which is MARTA, Metropolitan Area Rapid Transit Authority. Was in charge of $500 million for about 5 years of the budget, put it in the black. Was on the Emory board. I was on community improvement district boards where we revitalize underserved communities here, which is called the CID, Community Improvement District, started back in 2004. I chaired that. So a lot of grassroots on revitalization. Got the privilege of serving on police board also, Clayton Regional Police Academy board, where got to be on the board with all the sheriffs and the chiefs and get a great knowledge on public safety and how that plays a significant role in terms of any kind of development or having any prosperous business. Without the public safety, you can't have a good business. So very privileged to serve in that capacity. Also was appointed former chairman of the, when talking politics, I was a chairman of the largest county in the in the country, Gwinnett. And I believe I was the first Black American that was elected in that capacity, next to Michael Steele, who was the RNC chair. So it was only a couple of us 11, 12 years ago in those capacities. But also one of the great achievements, I like to say also, I was the executive director of the Diversity Coalition. We started in 2015 for candidate Trump at the time, which you saw it morphed into Black Voices for Trump, et cetera. It was a great honor and privilege. But with that, I got to be appointed by him to the Small Business Advocacy, which is Small Business Administration, which is separate from the SBA. We worked on policies and worked directly to the White House for the president. You heard about cutting the regulations and deregs. That was us. Southeast region, largest, most multicultural, region in the entire country, because it encompasses, Florida, Miami, Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Kentucky, and all those great states that have so much diversity, which I really loved it. Met some great people in small business. I'm glad to be back in my capacity. It was fun serving a while, but I have to say I do like staying in my entrepreneurship role. Obviously, it gives you a lot of freedom and a lot of, you can voice your opinions quite, in a larger capacity. But it was a great honor to serve and meet some wonderful people. But, I'm glad to be back, and I'm looking forward to having some great dialogue tonight and, talk about the pathway, how my wife and I, our journey in terms of, I like to say, from coming to Atlanta in 1988 with $35 from a dying oil economy in Texas. And 9 years later, I was a millionaire. So it's looking forward to the conversations, Dean.
And thank you so much, and for all that you bring to the table. So tonight we basically want to, kind of explore, some opportunities. We also want to try to highlight and in some ways dispel the myth that some people have that somehow business is bad, somehow that people that are in business are looking only to, take advantage of other people. I think sometimes business gets a bad rap, and I want to help to our listeners who typically are going to be, small business owners or, individuals within the African-American faith community. So David, just kind of set the stage for us really quickly because of your experience at, serving in a variety of capacities in government. But, how many quote unquote small businesses are there in our country, and what percentage of them are Black or minorities? And in that context, tell us a little bit about your role when you were there serving at MBDA.
Dean, thanks a lot. So let's set the stage. You got, first of all, let me congratulate Bruce on 29 years of marriage. This summer, I'll hit 28, 30 years together. So I'm right on your heels, Bruce. So you've got 30 million small businesses in this country, 11 million of which are minority-owned businesses, almost 3 million of which are African-American owned, 4.5 are Hispanic owned, 2.2 million are Asian American owned, and then you've got a million or so here between Native American and Asian Indian, not Native American, but Asian Indian owned businesses. So those 11 million businesses represent 8 million employees. They represent $1.8 trillion, Dean, to the U.S. economy. A lot of people don't know this, but minority-owned businesses are actually more valuable to this country than the U.S. airline industry. A lot of people don't realize that, and that's what makes the treatment by the U.S. Congress during the CARES Act 1 and 2, that's what makes it so disappointing, because the airline industry has been taken care of, Nicole, through the PPP and all that kind of stuff. And by the way, Nicole, every day, 972 Black women start businesses in this country. I don't know if you knew that, but they are the leading generators of businesses in this country on a day-to-day basis. So as I was saying, you got minority-owned businesses are worth $1.8 trillion to the U.S. economy, representing and employing 8 million people. And if the U.S. Congress treated minority-owned businesses like they treated the U.S. airline industry during this pandemic, we would have a much stronger economy than what we have now. Because right now, right now, because of the pandemic, 40% of Black businesses may close and never reopen. 50% of Black churches may close and not reopen. And it's really very simple. If businesses are not open, people can't work and people can't tithe. It's really that simple. Now, as far as my former agency where I was a director, which I'm very proud of, in the past year, we helped minority-owned businesses get $6.9 billion in contracts, 70% of which were with the private sector. And I make that point, Dean, which is very important because a lot of people have the misconception that the Minority Business Development Agency, which the only mission, the only reason it exists on the executive order that was put together by Bob Brown and President Nixon in 1969, people think the only thing we exist for is to help minority-owned businesses get government contracts. Couldn't be further from the truth. 7 out of every 10 contracts are private sector. And by the way, Bruce, we hit a new high because the previous year we did 3.1 billion in fiscal year 19, and fiscal year 20 we did 6.9. So we had a 122% increase in our ability to help minority-owned businesses. Remember, we have 24 centers around the country, 4 export centers if you're interested in getting into the export game, 4 export centers that we help minority-owned businesses. And we've got various programs. Nicole, we've got a great program called Enterprising Women of Color that we help women of color who are into business. We've got another program where we take people who are incarcerated, coming out of incarceration, and put them into entrepreneurship. And if you've got goods and services, if you want to sell some of them diamonds, Bruce, through Amazon, we got a program to help you get on Amazon to sell your goods and services. So I'm acting like I'm still running the place.
Hey, man, we think you should be.
But I'm very proud of the work that my team did in the time that I was there. We are literally one of the unsung crown jewels of the U.S. Department of Commerce and the U.S. government for the work that we do in helping minority-owned businesses continue to strive and move forward.
Man, that's fantastic. David, now, if people wanted to get some of that data, some of that information that you've mentioned, is that available for people to gather that information?
Absolutely.
Online?
You can go to www.mbdaMaryBravoDavidApple.gov. It lists all the 24 business centers there. You can connect to any one of them. It tells you who's in charge, their email address, their phone number. If you're interested in getting into exporting, our center in Chicago helps you. If you're interested in exporting to Africa, our center in Sacramento, to the Far East and the Pacific, San Antonio to Latin America, Miami to the Caribbean. So on our website, on the MBDA website, you can get all that information.
Wow. Nicole, hearing this from David, emphasizing that one of the fastest growing and largest new segments in the business world is that from women in business. Can you tell us a little bit about your role with the National Women's Business Council over there at the Small Business Administration?
Absolutely. And David, I'm very familiar not only with the agency, but Jathita Hernandez and I work very closely together. I've been a panelist on many of the Enterprising Women of Color panels throughout the pandemic and before. So absolutely very aware of the work that you're doing. Now, with the National Women's Business Council, I'm currently serving on the subcommittee for access to capital. And I think one of the things that I would point out is, again, not only are Black women starting businesses at a higher rate, the challenge is that one of the statistics that we don't know is 90% of women-owned businesses are solopreneurs, meaning they have no FTEs. And what does that it's kind of like the chicken or the egg scenario in terms of if they're also not getting access to capital, if they're not top of mind for angels, if they're not top of mind for lenders, and even some of our CDFIs, that means that they are stagnant in terms of their ability to scale, right, David? So one thing that one thing that I'm very proud of with not only with the council, but with our new organization, Starter Scaler, is that we're really trying to empower these women to know the resources, know the challenges, but also set them up for success with the relationships, building credit, and not only building their credit, but what we found is that there's some kind of reservations about even applying. So women are not applying because of the fear that they will be denied. So we're trying to link them up together, show them models of success. In fact, this month on all of my social media platforms, we have highlighted Black-owned, women-owned businesses that have hit the $1 million mark. Every day we highlight a new Black woman that has grossed business over $1 million. And I think that's important, especially as David said, we need to recognize these success stories as they are, and we want to build the pipeline of, again, more $1 million businesses by letting them know about the agencies that are there to aid them, about letting them know what did these businesses do, how were they successful, not only with their relationships, but also joining networking organizations, and getting their certifications so that they can do business, not only with the government, but as David said, with the private sector, with some of these certifications. So, those are some of the things that I advocate for with the council. I really do believe that access to capital is a primary resource, but also the relationships and knowing that the organizations are out there for us. We just have to continue to broadcast them and be ever vigilant about getting that information to these business owners.
And Dean, if I can just jump in for 1 second to piggyback off what Nicole said, and she talked about putting businesses in the pipeline. Nicole, we have MBDA has another great program for those businesses. You talked about businesses of women who have gotten over $1 million. And you know what? The research is showing that the number of Black businesses getting to $1 million has actually been stagnant for the last 5 years. So we came up with a program. We have a federal procurement program led by a guy named Tommy Marks, who used to be director of procurement for the U.S. Army. And what happens is for those businesses who are in that category of like $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, maybe they got 1 or 2 employees or no employees. We work with them and show them a couple of things that they can do to help them get over the hump so they can get up to $700,000 and to $1 million. So for those businesses who have never gone after a government contract before, wouldn't know how to go after one, we teach them how to go after government contracts and win. It's called the Federal Procurement Program. It's a part of MBDA, and Dean, it is on our website.
I would just like to say thank you for that. I'd like to talk to you offline because our community of starters and scalers we need that training. That's what we're doing. We invite people like yourself from the agencies to let these women know that they don't have to do that. This is not reinventing the wheel. These are people who have done it, but there seems to be a disconnect sometimes between the solopreneurs. They are, they're in their business, they're working in their business, and they just don't know how to pull back and work on their business. So that's what I try to do with our organization and really be that gateway, that liaison or broker to bring amazing people like yourself and the resources to them so they won't be intimidated and be in a position to scale.
Wow, look, we're changing the world right here. We're helping to empower people and making collaborative efforts. So this is fantastic. Thank you both of you. I want to shift the tone and the focus just a little bit. Bruce, this is Black History Month. We celebrate the achievements of African Americans in every aspect of our society. And, I was looking at some stats recently. There's been a lot of progress since the time period that I was born in the 60s, where we've had, now I think over 10,000 Black elected officials today, as compared to like 1,500 in 1965. But one of the things that I've recognized is, even though we've had success and we've grown in terms of the number of Black officials, we haven't had the commensurate increase in economic achievement. Have we sometimes in the Black community overlooked the potential of Black progress through business and free market? Bruce.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things is, let's take it a step here in terms of the diversifying a portfolio, meaning that how many are, let's just be real, how many of these Black officials are Democrat versus Republican? Are we balanced enough where, let's say it could be 50-50, so we can have some dialogue on both sides to agree to disagree, but it is stacked on one particular side. And I think that in itself, is a real disconnect. And, for me as a business owner, and my wife will tell you, you can't run a business and keep it a secret. When I say that, obviously, I have a lot of mentees over the past decades, but also it's kind of like a responsibility, a civic duty to be involved in your community, know your city council, know your police chief, know your mailman. I mean, I know it sounds a little extreme, but believe it or not, that's actually your power and in your community. But with that comes connectivity to banking and everything else in the community. But for right now, and it's just really not balanced enough, in my humble opinion, as it relates in the political scene, since you brought that up in terms of where we were in the 60s of 1,500 versus several thousands that we have now. I'd like to see that more of a balance. I'm not going to sit here and try to sell we all need to be Republicans or Democrats, but I do love a great balance to get some good conversations back and forth, that we can, nail down some, very positive policies or strong policies that's conducive to help the community, especially the underserved Black community. And I think that's been a really strong disconnect. And I might be getting the cart ahead of the wagon a little bit. And that's the reason why
this is really good. But one of the things I thought about it this way, Bruce, and this well because you've been in Georgia, you've seen Atlanta grow. I mean, before, and I lived in Atlanta too, but before we had or saw any elected officials from, say, the Korean community, they weren't trying to get elected, and there's nothing wrong with that. Our history shows that we used that as a way to get ahead, but they were buying up stores, they were starting businesses to get ahead. My point really is that should we also look at the free market and business way as a group of people to advance ourselves and to get ahead, not just looking and putting all of our eggs in the political basket? Yeah,
absolutely. That's a great question, because I like to speak out of example, my own testimony. And I remember, let's take Duluth, Georgia, for example. I built my first project was in 1998. It was an SBA 504 loan. It was $650,000 at the time. It was a rehab. We built one of our big jewelry stores over off Club Drive. I don't know if you remember, in Lawrenceville area. And about 3 years later, we built a $4 million project on some shopping centers we built on Sugarloaf Parkway. But as I noticed in 2002, I started a huge increase of the Korean community growing in Duluth. And I noticed that a lot of the stores and other establishments were primarily retail commodities. And that's another subject about inspiring Black America to seek after retail commodities more so than just, the service-oriented backgrounds that we have grown accustomed to having. For example, most predominantly Black communities. I've traveled a lot in the last 4 years and really opened my eyes even bigger in terms of 90% African American communities. We don't own the gas stations. We don't have the local convenience store. We don't have the gas station, yet there's 98% patrons in that community. Now, pivoting back to that question, not relying on, quote, the government aspect, as the Korean population that's very thriving very well right now as we speak. Matter of fact, it's one of the largest growing communities here in the Southeast in Georgia of Korean community, is the fact that the unity in terms of the crowdfunding mechanisms that they use in the families. Case in point, true testimony. One of my tenants was building a cleaners in 2003, and he basically build out's about 180,000 at the time. You know, you get your washers, it's about 2,000 square feet at the time, and he basically took from 20 family members, he took $10,000 a piece from each family member. Boom. He's up and going. I'm sitting there scratching my head. So about within a year and a half, he started, paying money back into the pot. Sooner than later, one of my other business colleagues on another shopping center went ahead and took the cousin out of that funding and put them in business. Now there's 14 cleaners now to this day where it started, where the quote crowdfunding for that particular community. My point where I'm going with this is that there has been an unfortunate disconnect, especially in Black America, as Black communities, is estimating our true value amongst our own network, amongst our own family members, amongst our own community. About it's not so much as just going to a bank and getting a 5, 6, 7% interest loan. It's also, it gets a little deeper in terms of where we as Black Americans can connect into. And of course, that conversation goes into another conversation on the generational wealth factor. And that some cultures inherently have some success in the generational wealth factors, which are Jewish communities here in Druid Hills, 4 and 5 generations. My business colleagues that I do business with, my diamond dealers, are working on 6 and 7 generations. You know, even during the pandemic situation, Dean, and for all the viewers, you know, what the sustainability was because of the generational wealth, where their debt was nothing. So they're sitting here with cash and inventory paid off, and they're sustaining the ups and downs in the economy as well as the pandemic. And that's another subject as it relates to the viability in terms of the generational wealth factor and how that makes you grow and how you use your community. So, you know, we have been disconnected for years. You know, we were very vibrant in 40s and 50s and 60s in some areas where there was all types of retail commodity Black-owned businesses. It's not something we're not accustomed to that we don't know about. It's just that we've got to redirect our thinking and our mindset into that concept of we can build this, we can grow this, we can pass this on to our families as our children's children. And I'm very excited about that because David made a great point. One of the fastest growing businesses is Black American businesses. And it's been like that for the past couple of years. And I say it's going to grow even stronger and faster. And so, yes, the objectivity here is to put more emphasis on family and even your faith-based community as well as your community, and looking at the internal workings of how you can grow the business more so than putting our eggs all in that basket in the political world. Great question.
Yeah. So Nicole, I'm going to go back. Bruce, what he said, and I think that you have seen this and you may have even addressed this in your book, which we'll get to later, but it is a mindset change sometimes. And I wonder if in some ways we have forgotten some of the great examples of Black business leaders from the day, like Madam C.J. Walker or a Maggie Walker, who started her own bank in Richmond, or David mentioned earlier, Reginald Lewis, or stories of Black Wall Street. So Nicole, are there lessons that we can take to help reshape the mindset of Black Americans today about how we can pool resources, use capital and resources, not just for spending, but also for saving and investing? Talk to us a little bit about how we can take some of the successes from the past to reshape or affirm our mindset today.
It's a great observation. We have great examples, and I think that, you know, my perspective is the media, if used properly, can be our modern day connection with those stories. You know, you talk about pooling resources. I actually tried to start a giving circle called Women of Influence, where you would take women, Black women, we all would contribute $1,000, and then we would find one, a startup business, a bakery, something like that, and we would give her that $10,000. How can we do that in mass? I think that, the use of social media, framing the narrative, bringing this out front, making it cool to kind of take care of our own, because the reason that I start these kind of organizations is because I see the statistics, and the entrepreneur in me is like, let's be creative, let's find a way, instead of it being an either or. I'm going to obviously use my advocacy skills on the Hill and talk about access to capital for women in biz. I'm going to go to the angels and ask them, let them know about it. But I think let them know about Black women-owned businesses and talk about the statistics. But it's also and that we can collaborate. We have so many success stories here. We have so many models, modern day models of entrepreneurship. And so I don't think that it's a mindset shift, because I think that the community, the African-American community at large, is very entrepreneurial. We have a lot of, I don't like the term side hustle, but sidepreneurship. We have lots of very, and I'll talk about this again. I'm staying on Black women. We start these businesses on the side because we're underemployed in our 9 to 5, or we're not promoted at the rates that our peers are. So we do what we need to do in order to scale our own households. So if we can tell those stories, it might be a simplistic way, but I think it's a strategy by using our networks, our communication skills, to show how these models of not only starting businesses, but investing, creating investment vehicles for our own. I think it's an excellent way to hit it from both ends. But it's like a tree falling in the forest. If you don't know that these types of access to capital and resources exist, then you don't know to model them. So I just really do like to focus on being out in front of the camera, being doing gathering circles, doing networking circles in order to get this information out. I will say too, being on the council, sometimes the government is camera shy. So, people don't trust the government, they trust people. And so I have always tried to use my resources, social media, and otherwise, to be the face of something, to be the face of business, so that people, when they see me, they're like, hey, she's going to give me some good advice. If she doesn't know it, she's going to call David, and David's going to come, and David's going to give us good advice. And that is, that's, I think, the power of media, and how it can really help our community.
That's excellent. I want to stay in that mode. David, for you, not everybody, most people are not going to own their own business per se. And I'm reminded of Frederick Douglass's famous speeches emphasized self-made men, where he strongly encouraged hard work and the idea of owning one's own labor, because as a slave, he had to work for somebody else, and he didn't get paid for it. So I'm thinking, for the average, Black American, how do we encourage them to increase even their value in the workplace? If they're not going to own their own business, how can they do things to increase their value so that people are willing to pay them more for their labor?
Well, Dean, it's interesting, and you and Bruce have kind of hit on this, but isn't this an age-old question that was actually raised by Booker T. Washington, who argued in his famous Atlanta speech at the Cotton Exposition, when he said that we should be focusing on our own labor, our own economic freedom, if you will, at the expense of political freedoms. Wasn't really interested in looking at political rights, but looking more in economics. And one of the things that I think, and this is another age-old question in the last 10 years, is, or what are we doing? And several things to answer your question. First of all, what are we doing to expose our folks to skilled trades positions, skilled trade jobs and apprenticeships? You know, I'm very proud of the work that I've done and that I've still done and continue to do. But I tell you what, the guy who came and fixed my heating and my air conditioning system made more money in 1 year than I did, okay? By fixing people's air conditionings and heating system. And because of this position I've been in, I actually met a Black-owned company, a Black-owned HVAC company that was doing $17 million a year in heating and air conditioning. So first of all, we haven't encouraged our folks as much as we should to make them realize that they can make a lot of money in owning and being in the trades. The second thing is we have to encourage people in lifelong learning and picking up new skills. Even I, I'll be 62 in June. Even I continue to upgrade my own skills either through Coursera, Google. You know, during this whole pandemic, I learned how to do two things that I didn't know how to do. I really didn't know Microsoft Teams and Skype for Business because I didn't really have to use it. The other thing is I learned how to e-signature DocuSign. And so now I don't do documents, I don't sign documents any other way. And I made sure the 50 employees that work for us, everyone knew how to do that as well. So first of all, we've got to expose our folks to the trades and the certifications, because in today's environment, Dean, you can do very well with these certifications. You don't even need a degree if you've got these technical certifications, and Google is making it easier than ever. And then secondly, we've got to encourage people that after you finish your training, you are in a situation of lifelong learning. You're going to have to continue to upgrade your skills if you're going to continue to be recognized and own your own labor. And the other thing is, and this is something I've learned and I would encourage, own your own brand. You are a brand unto yourself. Own your own brand. Make sure, do what you do and focus on doing that best. Bruce knows better than anybody. Do what you do best and job out the rest. Well, I was a successful entrepreneur, if you will, for 5 years, because one of the things that I did is I focused on what I did, and then I hired other entrepreneurs to do it for me.
That is fantastic. Bruce, and really you, all three of you are in a great capacity to answer this. And I'll start with you, Bruce. Just because we know that free market, allows for the, easy exchange of goods and services, and we can, create wealth, which is, you've emphasized about this whole generational transfer. Government, though, is also instituted by God. Some people talk more about the challenges that exist between it, but both can actually work together, meaning that those who are in the public sector, working at the state, local, or federal government, have an interest in businesses doing well and succeeding, because that creates more revenue and a tax basis for the local government, state government to do its business. Can you talk, Bruce, a little bit about, or really extend the conversation, as you've already discussed, how business, private sector, and the government can work together to see thriving, flourishing communities?
Yeah, I'm going to go a little deeper with that too, and just to remember, everything I'm telling the audience is I've actually lived it. It's not so much what I read or heard. I just left an event tonight, surrounded by predominantly Indian business owners in an event, and where I'm going with that, the majority of other colleagues, business colleagues that I've run across, especially from various cultures, even in the American culture, the biggest success, Dean, and I know this from our own experience, is the faith component injected into the business component, which those two take care of everything else in itself. It does works well with government, it works well with the community, because there is an accountability structure in that foundation, which essentially, if you, for example, if you look around some very, success is not so much as how big your house is, how much money you has. It's just how well you're a steward of the money, of how you take care of the infrastructure. And that's going to determine your sustainability through pandemics, through financial crashes, et cetera. Another subject there. But I will tell you that the biggest basis in the nucleus of the Lavelle household and the success my wife and I had is the fact of the faithful obedience of the tithing of the business. The tithing of the home is the protection covering. Now, I break bread with Hindus, Buddhists, Christians, Muslims, and we all had the same conversation. What I'm telling you, and this is, to me, this is one of the most important conversations that I can share with you. You don't have to believe it or not. People are like, well, Bruce, how did you do this? How did you do that? And I tell them, this is the basic, and this is the nucleus of the success for Sharon and I, is what I'm sharing with you. This is the gospel. This is the truth. This is the sustainability. This is when you run across folks and you see them like, man, how'd you do that? You look deeper into that. The majority of the successful businesses have a faith-based component. Me, Christ is in our house. And of course, my Muslim brothers have their faith, and my Hindu brothers have their faith and sisters. So therefore, I know this works because it's 27 years, I'm still here. Now, David, you know this, and Nicole and all this, the average new startup business doesn't last long. And there's another statistical data out there on how quick businesses shut down when they open. I always said anyone can open a business. Keeping it open is the challenge, but keeping it open has that strong faith-based component in there, which for us has been our rock. And that's got us through all the financial turmoils, the pandemics, and all the other things. And once again, it's proven. For example, we were 12% increase in sales during the pandemic, and a lot of people are like, wow, you're in luxury business. And the only credit I give back to is helping others. The tithing, once again, is the safety net, is the structure and the backbone and the rock of the business. Now, you can start off and do whatever you want, but I will tell you this, God is my witness, whether you believe or don't believe. If you don't put that in that foundation, you will not make it.
So it's really important. I'm thinking, Nicole, there are people who, are really outwardly expressive about their faith, but there are thousands of people that go to work, every day, and they live their faith out by how they treat their employees, by how they pay their vendors. You've written a book called CEO of My Soul. Tell us a little bit about why you wrote that book, what inspired you, and how you use some of those principles as you are teaching entrepreneurs and business owners today.
Oh, great. Well, the long story short, because the long story is in the book, which you got to read. But I wrote a book about my life. My first business was a hair salon and day spa called Soul Day Spa. And I owned and operated that for about 8 years, eight and a half years. And in 2009, me, like a lot of other businesses, I was forced to close my doors. And that was really my season in the wilderness. I had a conversation earlier today, but that was my season. Everything was going wrong. I went through a failed marriage. I, had decimation financially. Even the car that I, took like 1,100 years to pay off, it was like in a freak accident, all within, just really months of each other. So, what I learned is, the unconditional feeling of love that I felt in that moment that God had for me, because it's very easy when you are filled with success and physical manifestations of success, a successful business, cars and homes and those things, to get distracted. But when you are really kind of stripped of those things, I felt God's love even more deeply and more directly. And what I share with people, entrepreneurship is not just a metaphor, but having your faith, your spirit, that love that God feels for you, having that feeling yourself, being able to love yourself that way. It's especially important when things are so turbulent, businesses are being decimated, our lives are changed, but what is constant is God's love for us. And so I shared that because that was really the first tool, the stepping stone for rebuilding my life. And it was rerouted. So I absolutely agree with Bruce that, when you are anchored in your faith and you have that as the foundation to rebuild, it is more substantial. Also, you are, for me, saying that you are the CEO of your soul. It's really letting your soul be your CEO. It's letting your purpose drive your decision making, whether it be professionally or personally, doing things that are consistent with love, doing things that are consistent, that are not adverse to your self-interest, that are not adverse to other people. That worked for me. I saw a very big shift that, the blueprint of loving God, loving myself, and loving others in that order, it really laid a quite a lovely paradigm for my life. And it really cleared away clutter in terms of, I would no longer do business that would be adversarial, things that were against my nature. What do I mean? I'm an attorney, for God's sake. So sorry. But choosing not to be a litigator, right? Not being adversarial, not being defensive. I wanted to be an advocate. I wanted to help empower and build up things, not tear people down. And so there's all kinds of ways that I can use my skill sets as an attorney. But again, rebuilding on my purpose and my faith, it really made my decision-making a lot clearer, and made my relationships a lot healthier because I had a really great paradigm for love and for purpose. And that's something that I do try to share with my business owners and friends that I coach in this area.
Wow. Well, I will say firsthand as the chairman of the Douglass Leadership Institute and the Frederick Douglass Foundation that we have been blessed by some of your handiwork. If people want to this month visit whoisfrederickdouglass.org, a website that your team created for us a little while ago. It has great, valuable information on the great abolitionist Frederick Douglass, and there are many other things that I could point to that you and your organization, your company, have been helpful to our organization, and I want to say I'm grateful for that. I can't believe that our time is just about gone, but what I want to do before we close is for each of you to think about talking to the people that we are focused on. Some of you know that last year when the pandemic occurred, we shifted some of our programming at the Douglass Leadership Institute, and a number of our staff, Keverick McCain, Tori Snow, and others went into action by helping over 250 small businesses, most of them Black small businesses, some of them churches and nonprofits, to engage with them to help prepare them and to connect them to the CARES Act and SBA. And we helped them to secure over $4.5 million for their small businesses. My point is that it's been our heart and desire to engage with a lot of the ordinary people that don't know about some of the resources that are available. And so, David, if you would take the first swing at addressing your comments to that segment, what would you say to new entrepreneurs or people that have just started their business and they want to know more about how they can be successful? We'll go to you first, then Bruce, and we'll close with Nicole.
Sure. I would, Dean, there's a couple of things I would tell people. Number one, there's a whole bunch of free resources out there that people just don't realize that they're free. SBA is there for startups or people who are just starting up. They have a series of what is called SBDC, Small Business Development Centers located around the country, specifically to help businesses, small businesses, entrepreneurs who are just starting out. MBDA is there for those really folks who have been around a year or two or three, like Nicole is saying, hey, you're about a couple of $100,000. You're trying to get up to the next level. You're not sure how to get there. We have 26 centers around the country. We've got some great programs that I talked about before, enterprising women of color, folks coming out of incarceration into entrepreneurship. If you want to get on Amazon's platform, we've got a special program to put you through. And once you graduate out of the program, we can put you on Amazon's platform. We've got our 4 export centers to teach you how to get into the exporting game. We've got all of those things that can help you. All you've got to do is go on mbda.gov. We have even, Dean, and I'm gonna close out here. We have even helped, which is not our role at MBDA or my former agency, MBDA, but it is not our role to help folks to go after PPP money and CARES Act money through SBA. But yet we did that and helped businesses, Nicole, who were having problems getting through the pipeline of the problem, because in a national emergency, you cannot stand on protocol. If I can help you get what you need, then we decided we were going to do that. Didn't matter if that was MBDA's job or not. It was our job to help people get to where they needed to go. And we did that.
Man, this is so valuable. I appreciate that. And before I turn it over to Bruce, I just want to say I've never really thought of myself over the years as a business person, definitely more so as a social entrepreneur, how I can help people. But through Bruce and people like Bruce, I saw ways to put the social entrepreneurship that I had into practice. And with the help of friends and family members, people like Bruce and Alveda King and others, we were able to put our skills to use to start a small business that was able to, earn over $1 million in its first year. And I just want to say how grateful I am to people like Bruce, Nicole, and you, David, who are willing to go out of their way to help other people to make a difference, and not just make a difference, but also to be blessed for our labor. So Bruce, floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks, Dean. Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, it's interesting what I'm about to say is that there are 2 things I just want to leave it here in closing. One of the biggest gifts you can have in terms of starting your own business is obviously when you work for someone, that's your training ground. And when you work for someone, be the first one to leave, the first one there and the last to leave, and to be early, but don't be on time. To be on time is late. Number 2, when you're trusted as a steward of their money, then, one day it'll be your money. So the question is, were you a good steward with someone else's money in order to be trusted with your own money? Let that marinate for a second. The second part, I didn't realize this, but 2/3 of the people who worked for me over the decades have gone on to build their businesses. I'm actually working on another young lady now that she sees the light at the tunnel where she's going to own her business one day. So it's not so much as I like to say it's a fisherman of men and women on the education, because you can't stay there forever, because I'm going to be the richest one in the company, not my employees. But I'll be honest with you, but you're going to get the knowledge where you're going to take the basic concepts, whatever you want to open. I've got law practices. I've got medical practices. I got a very successful makeup artist that just started her business 3 years ago. She's in Hollywood. She's big. I've had car guys. I've had a lot of successful employees, watch this, who went on to build their own businesses. But with that being said, I had to instill in them that, listen, I want you to spend my money as if it's your money. And if you're trusted with that, then you'll be blessed to have your own money. And so I go to say this, that the mentorship is the most powerful all OJT imaginable. You can go get a degree in business and finance, whatever you want to do. Those are great too, don't get me wrong. But the best is sowing seeds into your staff and watching the fruits of fruition come when you look up and say, wow, that's one of my, but watch this real quick. You know, Dean, I've done several of these in the last several months, and I don't think about it. And the reason why you don't think about it is you bless someone and push them and don't ask for anything in return. If they ask you, say, well, no, I want you to help the next person. And that's the blessing in itself. So yeah, I'm going to be a little more biased to our brown brothers and sisters because it is a disconnect for us. So I am a little biased to helping them more. Sorry, I'm guilty. But I have found that is the best when it's like anything in life. When you show someone the door, oh, man, what can I do for you? Bless the next person. And a lot of times I just forget about it and look up one day. Oh yeah, I forgot about that story, Dean, because there's been 4 more others I just totally forgot about. And I'm glad I'm forgetting about it because I don't want a motive to like give me something back and all that other crazy stuff, because I don't want the blessing to get robbed. That gets back to the sustainability on your business and your home.
It's fantastic. Nicole, you're going to get the last word. You're talking to yourself, maybe a woman who maybe has come on difficult times, but still has a desire to be a business owner, but yet it seems like everything around her maybe is saying that there's no way that she can do it. What do you say to her?
I say to link up and to stay inspired. You know, there are the heart of a woman and the courage of a Black woman is something that our country was founded on. We have gone through generations of adversity and we still have hope, and we are still reaching back and lifting others up. I would tell her to pause and take those tools and invest in herself, stay hopeful. And I think David said, always stay learning. You know, there is no point in the cycle of an entrepreneur, whether you are a startup or whether you are a multimillionaire, where you ever stop learning about your craft. If you ever stop learning how to pivot and be agile and be open, I think those are all great skill sets, great mindsets in order to stay open but connected. I cannot overstate the value of connection and community to each other and resources. We are a very polarized nation, and the only thing that hurts is us when we can't see beyond the few things that divide us and see things together. Business helps everyone. So if we are giving access to one another, the resources and relationships, then we can definitely all build. Let's, take the negatives, take the discourse out of it, and let's discuss instead of, being despondent and disparaging to one another. That opens up opportunities, and we have so many more things that if we listen to different viewpoints and adapt and add them to it, I think we can be so much more successful.
This has been fantastic. We've been discussing Blacks in business, exploring pathways to economic opportunity for African Americans. I'm so grateful to David Byrd, Bruce Lavelle, and Nick Cober, who have been a blessing to us today. Nicole, before we completely sign off, let people know where they can get that book and those resources.
Wonderful. Well, again, thank you so much, Dean, for having me here. CEO of My Soul is on Amazon.com. You can get it anywhere. We also, it's COVID. So if you're going into bookstores, you can go into Barnes and Noble, wear a mask. Also, you can go to startherscaleher.com. I call it the Starter Scaler Nation. Whether you are a starting business or you are scaling and you want to be a mentor, you want to invest in our young women entrepreneurs, young at heart, we all need you as a resource. And again, Dean, and also my day job is at cjrlegal.com. Again, looking for legal advice, looking for economic development opportunities. We are there and very happy to serve.
This has been the Frederick Douglass Foundation and the Douglass Leadership Institute hosting this fantastic business forum. Thank you so much for joining us. Please visit our website at dlinstitute.org or fdfnational.org. Thank you so much. God bless you.